Thank you, everybody, for joining the Thought Fuel Podcast, Episode 2. Thank you for supporting us through the kinks of launching a podcast. As you can see, there are aesthetic differences with Episode 1 versus Episode 2. We're very excited to be hosting our next guest, Donna Korren. She is... Well, I won't go into the details of who she is, but I met her through producing TED Talk. She has an amazing TED Talk called The Newest Workforce Disruptors Are Over 50. It's one of my favorite TED Talks, especially because it means a lot to me because 50 isn't that far away from where I am right now, which is a crazy thing to think about. And it really gives you a lot of pause. It makes you pause and really think about that stage of your life. But it is a multifaceted conversation. Donna has lived multiple lives and will live multiple more lives doing different things. She is a very fascinating person. I am very, very proud and fortunate to have her as our guest. So without any further ado, Donna, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Nicos. I'm so happy to be with you. And it really needs to be said that a very significant part of my journey in my transition during my 50s is attributed to being invited to be on your TEDx stage and deliver my talk. And that really created so many other possibilities and opportunities. And so we have a very significant relationship because you originally bought in to my enthusiasm about this new life stage and all its possibilities and gave me the opportunity to share that with many people around the world. So I want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. And what really interested me because it really talks about the stage after your 50s once you're and that's what we when I first met you, it was about the empty nester or the concept of the empty quester as you frame it. It's about the life you have after your children move on and then how do you prepare for that stage of your life. But there are so many interesting tidbits in there about preparing for any next stage in your life, no matter what age you are, whether you're in your 20s and you just got out of college or 30s and after you got out of a long-term relationship or changed jobs, all of that applies. But I would love for the audience to know a little bit more about you.
So I think it's fun also because that will illuminate, how many pivots and how open I was to different possibilities all throughout my life. So I went to Cornell, I studied communications, and I came out with a degree in communications, and I brought that into the publishing world. And I worked in publishing for more than 25 years. I was at Vogue for many years as their advertising manager. And then when I had my first child, I went to the parenting group, which was directed to all new parents. And I was involved in advertising sales there. And then when I had my second child, I moved to the suburbs and was given the opportunity to create a magazine of our own, which was a high-end luxury lifestyle magazine. And so having never done anything entrepreneurial, I said yes. And we had a successful magazine for 7 years. And during that time, married, 2 children, still married, 2 older children now. And then strangely, ended up pivoting into merchant services, which is payments, which is credit card payment processing. And that's so funny to me because I had no background training in banking, in numbers, and I was given an opportunity that gave me maximum flexibility with my family. I said yes, and it's been 10 years, and that turned out to be a great, lucrative, different type of career. And 5 years ago, I created a passion project. I created a digital platform called Empty Quester for empty nesters on our quest for our bold next chapter, because that was very much what my life stage was about. And I just played with it. I wrote and I blogged and I did video content and found that it was well embraced by so many people, men and women alike, who were facing this empty nest and were considering the question, gee, what's next? And I guess because I've always been very I guess, open and relaxed when it came to what's next, it became something that I grew. And today I teach my What's Next workshop. And so far I've just taught it to women, but it's an opportunity to take a deep dive for a month. It's virtual, and to figure out how to get from the point where you don't know what's next and how to take yourself to that, next place and ready yourself for the next opportunity. And what I've realized in teaching it is that it's applicable to people, yes, absolutely, in this 50 plus life stage, but it's so applicable to anybody at a juncture trying to figure out what's next.
Yeah, exactly. And, if we take a look back at this past decade, right, we've been impacted by so many different things: social justice, the Me Too movement, COVID, a strong economy, a weak economy, a strong economy, and a weak economy again. And it's been definitely the roaring 20s from a decade standpoint. So there's a lot of stuff that impacted us, right? Especially for my generation, the millennials, where we started our careers right in the pandemic, right in the recession, the original recession of 2008, 2009. And we've been going from one crisis to the other, showing resiliency and having to have a growth mindset to our careers, to our relationships, to investing in real estate, to investing in stock market, to doing things that unfortunately the recipe for success that we were taught previously may not apply anymore. So you always have to be in this mindset of readiness to shift and pivot. And I wonder, through your teachings, through meeting all these different people that are going through different things in your work, what do you find is the biggest detractor from them moving on and getting prepared for that next move in their life?
I would think,
Is it fear? Yeah. Is it?
I would say that the single greatest factor is fear. And I think that probably goes across all generations. And, let's say in my generation, it was much more linear. People took a job, stayed there for, 20 plus years, got the gold watch. We were a much more linear generation. And in raising children, my kids are 24 and 28, I've seen that, they're much more flexible. They're much more resilient. They're more curious. They're more confident. And yet, what I can say is that when somebody is impeded from moving forward, it's generally because of fear. And it could be fear created by what we've been taught by society about change. Change can be scary. And then it becomes our own internal narrative about where we're limited. And what I do in the workshop is I have 4 pillars, and it's called my BEAT method. And the first one is banishing limiting beliefs. So that's where we tackle fear. And, because everybody has it at every age. And
yeah, so I really want to touch upon that, right? Because we have an audience that are hopefully, this is our second episode, but we have audience from all over the world, and the term limiting beliefs may not be known to everybody. So can you explain that in your own words?
So a limiting belief is something either external or is a narrative that we tell ourselves that holds us back. And it could be, what we've seen in the media, what we've watched on, social media, what we've believe is what a path should look like, or what an entrepreneur is all about. We're either told externally or internally we have, something in our head that says, I can't really do that in let's say in my age group. Very often it shows up as I'm too old, I'm not trainable, I don't know where I would get the new knowledge. But in a younger person, because I see it, it's also, a belief that says, I can't do that. And often it's, well, somebody else can do it. You're giving away your power.
Yeah, giving away your power, and also maybe telling yourself a story of who you think you are, and you become so rigid in that interpretation of your identity that you can't pivot, and it's almost like you're stuck, and it doesn't feel like it's being stuck because that's who you are, and you kind of close yourself off to all these other opportunities out there that you don't know about because you're just not pivoting. And there's a lot of self-talk that you do that kind of forces you to go down this vicious cycle of redoing and doing the same things over and over again, experiencing the same results, right? Which is the definition of insanity, and not really changing anything because you're like, well, that's who I am. And I'm wondering, through your teachings, you talk about these limiting beliefs, right? And do you go through the exercise of having them look inward and write them down? Do you find that helps? What's the approach there?
Well, one is deciding if it's, is it a real thought? Does it have to be dispelled by a replacement thought? Or is it actually something that is limiting? And then what's your replacement action going to be? So yes, we spend a lot of time, talking about limitations and where they're coming from and what needs to be done with them. But where it really gets fun, like I said, it's the beat method. So it's banishing limiting beliefs, and then it's envisioning your next chapter. Now, the great thing about envisioning is you just spoke about having a story. So we all have stories. But the greatest thing, and when you speak to successful people and who have made their dreams come true, they've written another story. They've actually envisioned another story. And that's what we do. And when you start to envision and then eventually activate your story, that's where it gets fun. And that's what you do. You create a new story for yourself, and you do it with so much joy and freedom and fun, because really at the end of the day,
exactly,
isn't it true? We create our own story. We write our own story. You wrote your own story.
Exactly.
You decided you wanted to organize a TED, and you did.
Yeah.
You wanted to create a.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, I had the idea. I did it. I was in the scene for maybe like 2-3 years. Then I had the idea of doing my own TED Talk that did really, really well, beyond my wildest dreams. I still get messages from all over the world, and it's something that I did 1.5 years ago, but I get tagged on something new every couple of days on LinkedIn, or I get a message from somebody that say, hey, I watched your TED Talk and it really resonated with me. And I thought when I was going to do it, nobody was going to actually see this thing. But again, although it was a good experience, I closed that chapter and I'm done with it. And I'm starting a new one with this podcast. And I see it all the time, sometimes, especially if you're in the TED scene, you'll see on LinkedIn, people are like TEDx speaker or TEDx producer. And I'm like, I'm done with that. I went through that stage, that phase, but now I'm done. I'm ready for something new, and I'm ready for a podcast producer or a podcast host or something else. And I feel like that's how you keep things fresh and exciting and new, and embracing that growth mindset of embracing something new and trying your hat at something different. And you learn so many different skills. Right now, I'm learning so much about audio production, as you can imagine, from like the technical difficulties that we had before the podcast. I've learned so much about setting up a podcast. And I think it's very invigorating, because as you grow older and become more experienced, you start thinking, oh, I know everything that I need to know. I'm not really going to learn a lot more new things. But I'll tell you this, I've been doing Spanish for the last 5 years. I've been doing lessons, one lesson every week. So, and I feel like it's opened me up to something different. And I started learning in my mid-30s, and I can have conversations with different people about different things. And it's not just the basic things like, how are you? I can have a robust conversation about the political situation in Peru if you want me to, in fluent Spanish. Not fluent, but semi-fluent. So nothing where I'm going to embarrass myself completely. So it's very invigorating, and I try and teach people and coach people through it. And that's why I decided I'm going to do a podcast about mindset. Just because with mindset is applicable in every aspect of your life, whether it's, work, your personal relationships, whether it's your partner, your wife, your husband, your kids, your friends. And, I imagine as well, like if you're working with a population that is in their 50s or 40s, you realize the importance of not only having friends in your life and having strong relationships of friendships, but also having the right friends there for you, right? And having the important support structure that are really going to help you navigate and be participants in this new stage in your life.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I want to come back to that because that's interesting. That's the last pillar in what I teach. But you said
Awesome.
something so great, and you spoke about learning. So recently I attended a longevity conference, and after spending the day with all kinds of people in the medical field, pharmaceutical field, and HR and advertising, the number one antidote to aging is learning. It makes total sense to me. My parents were lifelong learners. My father continued to work in the field of law into his 90s. And my mom continued to work in her 80s. I know your mom switched careers. And so being a lifelong learner is the antidote to aging. And what I've learned is what you might think, it's so great that you took up Spanish. And, with my kids, they're always taking up something new. The myth out there is that you might think that people who are in my age group have lost their hunger for learning. And that could not be further from the truth. And that's what's shown up in my workshop, that people are ready to go. They might not know exactly what they want to learn, but they are open and quite able to learn new things. And when you're learning, that is how you're changing your mindset. And you can't just think, you can't just be, thought fueled. You have to be activated. And the way you get activated is you take an idea that you have. And I knew that you had an idea to do a podcast some years ago, and you thought about it, and then you activated it. And you activated it in learning how to do it. To me, the biggest predictor of success in this What's Next chapter is how willing and able you are to activate the ideas that you create for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And just kind of like a little side note about myself. So I'm very passionate about real estate. Like the podcasts that I listen to are Bigger Pockets and about investing. And during COVID, which really impacted me and kind of made me rethink, all right, what's the story I want to have in the next couple of years? What do I want to focus on, right? And I feel like it wasn't one thing, it was a lot of things. And one of them was long distance real estate investing. And I bought a couple of properties out of state, and I'm probably going to buy a property every year for the next 8-9 years until I become 50. That's the plan. And I wasn't able to do that because I kept on thinking about making moves and I would never act on them. But now with this shift in mindsets, it's possible, irrespective of whatever interest rates are like right now. You cross the bridge when you get there. And some of the best advice I got was, you won't know what you need to do until you need to do it. And irrespective of the economy, irrespective of which political party is in power, you really can change the trajectory of your life based on how you act and activating those thoughts. And just to go back to why I brought up real estate, it was because I listened to this podcast, Bigger Pockets, and they keep bringing all these people on there that talk about something called analysis paralysis, where you overthink something, where you become so obsessed with something that you overthink about it and you do nothing because it can be exhausting. It's exhausting to make that first move, right? But you need to start from somewhere and you got to just keep going at it. Because I do think, and we've discussed this before in personal conversations, manifesting is real. Like, if you really think about something all the time and you apply massive action to it, even in small daily doses, you're going to be successful at what you're going to do. And maybe you might not be successful at the thing that you're attempting at that moment, but you're going to learn so much from that experience that you might be successful at what you're going to do next because of that move, even if that last move was a failure. And I feel that's the thing with Tedx. I learned so much about production. And I also learned that, like, for example, you brought up the podcast. I was telling you I was going to do the podcast 3 years ago. Yet it's 2023, the end of 2023 or 2024, beginning of 2024. And we're doing the second episode right now. And what really stopped me was I was trying to figure everything out by myself. I bought a microphone. I brought a green screen. I downloaded software. I tried learning how to edit videos, how to launch videos. And then I said, at some point, this is too much. I can't do it. It's too much of a time commitment. Right now, what is making this happen is just accepting I can't do all of that by myself. Let me just pay somebody to do it. I don't need to figure it out. And let me just do this thing that I wanted to do. And it's taken me down this amazing path because, one, I get to reconnect with people that have amazing people that I crossed paths with in the past, which, like, one of them being you. And then also I have an opportunity to meet interesting people and talk to them about life and the world and the universe. So I do highly encourage people, if you're listening right now and you've been thinking about something for a very long time, you just don't know how to do it, figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, find somebody that can help you. And that could mean paying for it or working with them collaboratively to help you make it happen. But there's ways. Try and get yourself out of that analysis paralysis.
There's a different way, not as fancy a word as analysis paralysis. I call it, when I teach it, is just do it messy. Just do it messy. Yeah. Because once you activate, I mean, there are many things in my career I shared with you, you know, the things, the wins, but there were so many things that I did, that I tried, that I was like, nope, that's a mistake, pivot. You know, nope, that's not for me, pivot, but at least I tried. It's funny when I think about applying for the Tedx, you know this story, but I was taught to do a vision board, and now I teach vision boarding. And never knowing anything about Tedx, I actually put a stage, the TED Talk stage, and then I took a picture of myself and I put myself on it. And that happened, I guess, in 2018 or 2019 before I met you. And then, so I didn't really know what I was doing, but then I did a Google search. And through that Google search, I learned, oh, there's a TEDx and it's local. So I'm taking you down this path so that you see the do it messy concept. So then I realized, okay, there are things in New Jersey. I live in Manhattan. There are things in New Jersey. There are things in Connecticut. There are things in Manhattan. And I started to LinkedIn inbox, you know, whoever was the organizer. And nobody in any of the other TEDx groups responded to me, but you did. And I was like, okay, would you like to have a call? And you were like, sure. And that's how it started. And that was doing it messy. I had no idea. I didn't have a clear shot. I didn't have a friend who said to me, oh, I've done a TEDx, you know, this is how you do it. But I did it. And so I think when you talk about manifesting is a fancy word. And of course, I completely believe in it, but it's for setting an intention and then doing the work that goes along with that, being really clear and then
Exactly.
doing the work that goes along with that. And eventually, if you do the work and you do the work and you do the work, it's going to take you to a result. And then you get to decide, okay, is this what I really want to do? You know, if you're active and you're envisioning and vision boarding, you can change it. But the whole thing is really to get out there and do. With your real estate investments, some will hit, some won't, but 10 years from
Exactly.
now, you will absolutely be a real estate. You are now, you know, you actually are now. You are a real estate
Yeah,
investor because you, yeah.
exactly. And you learn so many things. And just to kind of touch upon what you said, right? You reached out to so many TEDx organizers and no one got back to you. And a lot of people will do that and go through that process, and they'll see it as rejection. They'll take it personal, and they'll let that silence put them down. Or maybe they'll start thinking, oh, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I'm not this, or maybe I'm not that. And they could be just one or two people away from actually getting the answer that they want, but they give up. And that's why it's so important to be consistent at what you want to do, and maybe rethinking what your approach is, and maybe just saying, okay, well, if this isn't working, what else would?
Mhm.
You know, and being out there and putting yourself out there and saying, hey, and this is the great thing about manifesting, right? Because when you think about something for a very long time and you're talking about it and you're kind of almost obsessed with it, people around you, and that we go back to the topic of the support system and the having the right friends and having good personal relationships. When you want to do something and people know, and they act maybe as multipliers, that's like an extra network of people that can help you bring you closer to your goal.
Totally. So one of my favorite quotes is
Awesome.
Alchemist, and he says it's widely quoted. When you want something, the universe will conspire to help you get it, which is what you're saying. You know, you want it in the universe, people you'll meet, they'll show up. But recently, Barbara Streisand, I think, reinterpreted it, and she said, in the moment when you make a commitment, the universe will conspire. I love that nuance because it requires something from you. It requires something from you. You got to make that
Exactly.
commitment. And the last pillar in my course is about teaming up. So when you say you want to be surrounded by the right people, you can have great friends, you can have a great mate, you can have, many people in your life. That doesn't mean that those are the people in your life that are necessarily going to move you forward on your ideas. And as you go out into the universe and you share with your whole heart what interests you, you're going to meet more and more people who are the type of people who are going to support that. Which is why I give the workshop, because people will come, they have great lives, they have great friends, but they're not in conversation about taking themselves to this next stage. And so we create this mini community where they're surrounded by people who are eager and talking about the same things. How do I get to that next step? And then, we talk about the networking, the outreach, going way back in your life and seeing, who you can talk to. And what happens is it becomes addicting, because once you're clear and you're committed to going forward, that's what happens. The rejections or the no's sort of bounce because you're on a mission, and you surround yourself with people who are
Yeah.
excited about that, and then there become more yeses than no's.
Yeah, exactly. And that journey of self-discovery and discovery of something new brings you into this place where you're surrounded by all these people that are like-minded, and they not only act as motivators or competition for you to kind of help you move forward, they also create some level of accountability that you don't, and it's not accountability like, a strict parent. It's, you don't want to let these people down. You don't want to let yourself down. And if you're surrounded by these people that want to see you do good, you're going to do great. You're going to do great. You're going to be laser focused on your goal. And maybe in your journey, something's going to tell you maybe, okay, well, this goal that you had may not be the one for you. Maybe you need to do something different. but you'll be on course for something greater than you were before. And I think for a lot of working professionals, life, we talked about it a bit in the beginning of the podcast about how life is different now than it was before, right? An example of this, how expensive life is, right? I remember in the 80s growing up, I used to watch the show Married with Children with Al Bundy and everything. And as absurd as that whole show was, the most absurd thing about it was the fact that as a shoe salesman, he could afford a house in the suburbs the size of what it was, which is insane. It's the most baffling thing about that show in hindsight. And then you look at that now, and those homes are like more than 1.5, 2 million. And that's an insane amount of money. And that impacts people in my generation, people in 2 generations down, where they get out of college, they subscribe to, all right, I'm going to do this skill set, this major, I'm going to be set for life. But that's not the truth. That's not accurate anymore. And you're seeing very smart people go down this path of, oh, wow, things are much more challenging than I thought they would be, or I was told they would be. And you have a lot of people that are a little bit lost, and it takes time for you to figure things out. Plus, we're growing in a time where technology often isolates us versus connecting us. And originally, when we created the World Wide Web, it was with the intention that the world would be much more flatter and more interconnected. And we've just become much more isolated. And it's very tragic. It's very tragic. But that's the challenge that is presented to these younger generations. And the cost of living, the challenging life, the loneliness of life. It means that people aren't getting married and starting families earlier, right? They're pushing it later on into life, which means that, and I'll give you an example of myself. I am 41 years old and I have a 3-year-old. And that means that if I'm going to have another child, I'm going to have kids in my home in my 60s. So that means that changes everything about what my life is supposed to be like when I'm 60. That means that I need to be in amazing shape if I want to see grandchildren. That means that I need to be much more resilient and flexible in my 60 than prior generations needed to.
If it gives you some comfort, I am the youngest of 3. Yeah. My dad had me when he was 41. He lived till 92. He was litigating at the age of 90. Awesome. And what he said, just to go, because you just threw out a lot, and I think of my own girls, and I'm like, yeah, it's a very tough generation, this next generation. Yeah. But he was a lifelong learner, and he kept learning and doing. And so, I am the spokesperson. I am the poster child for it's never too old. It's different. And yes, health. I love that you talked about health. I know you've been on a great push to improve your health. That's number 2 in the longevity conference, lifelong learner, and then keeping yourself, physically and healthily well. But it's a different path, but it's a great path. Things might just happen a little bit later. And shameless plug for things happening a little bit later. When you look at statistically people who were 50 and older, there's a certain, the more you live life, the more resilience you have and the more experience you have. And that informs you in a different way. So some of the hurdles, let's say for people my age, might be that beat that they take, like, uh-oh, I'm afraid, I don't quite know what to do. But then when they do have the seed of an idea, this is old news, but 1 in 2 new businesses are started by people 50 and older. But the new statistic that came out from the Kaufman Index is that 88% of entrepreneurs between the age of 55 and 64 have created a business out of choice, not necessity. So I think that these are fun facts that speak to the fact that even if you get started later, and we can go back and talk about, some of the generational differences, but let's say for this generation, even if you're getting started later, And especially if you draw from some of the wisdom and strength of people who are a generation older than you, that there's a lot to learn. Your life might look a lot different than your parents' lives, but it can be, you know, very fulfilling. And maybe because you're giving up some of those, linear ideas. I'm going to work, I'm going to make this much money, I'm going to own this home, I'm going to have a mortgage. That was my generation, and in a way that kind of handcuffed you. And the next generation is able to be more creative and cobble their careers together in a different way, and not be so uber focused on gaining a certain amount of income to purchase a certain kind of home. It kind of creates all different possibilities if you look at it with a positive
Absolutely.
lens.
Yeah, and that could mean taking down a path of, all right, well, it means you might be able to rent longer, but there's not going to be the societal pressure of needing to achieve material things, and there's going to be more purpose driven. And I really want to touch upon that because you speak about your father, and it sounds like he lived a very purpose driven life. Can you just give us a couple of things that you learned from him about having a meaningful and long life?
When you say purpose driven, see, this is exciting because you talk about purpose and you think
Yeah.
purpose is like, I'm going to change the world. He was very clear. His first and foremost purpose was to provide for family, and which he was a wonderful uh, role model. He valued learning. He valued reading. He valued so many things that he shared and he imbued for his children. And the purpose was, he lived a very moral life. He was an attorney. He was, he fought for the underdog. So, but he liked his work. He liked his life. He continued to learn. He saw many things in the world. He traveled with my mom. And he wasn't driven by money. He was driven by living a good and moral and loving life. That to me was very
Awesome.
purpose driven.
And exactly. And do you in your work ask your students, hey, what kind of life do you want to live? Like, how do you ideate that? Like, say, if you're looking for something new, is it working on a manifestation board, or is it you go a little bit more deeper and try to understand what are the motivations behind what kind of life people
Sure.
want to live?
They're coming to me. No course, like when I was manifesting my course, I was like, I made it really clear. I wasn't there to help people who were like bereft and grieving at the end of this parenting stage. That wasn't for me. I wasn't skilled for that. I'm not a therapist. That wasn't who I was attracting. Who I was attracting were people who were coming and saying, I know I have this long runway ahead of me. I have 30 years more. I want to feel purpose-based. And so that's the first thing. The people who are coming, they might not know what their purpose is, but they know that they want to live another purposeful several decades. And the vision board exercise is everybody's favorite thing, because it's when they have the opportunity to really think about and then put on a physical board. It's, arts and crafts 101, but put on a physical board what it is that lights them up. And we spend, and people, I had it, but it's now in the other room. What a vision board actually looks like, and where you keep it in your home, so that every day you are reminded of these ideas that you created for yourself, and you go for them. And then we spend time activating those ideas, and we spend time teaming up, which is, what every word you're saying makes me laugh, because it's one of the pillars. You're banishing your limiting beliefs, you're envisioning the life you want, you're activating it with meaningful steps, and you're teaming up for accountability. That's the BEAT method. And it doesn't matter if you're in your 50s, your 40s, your 30s, your 20s, that method applies. Take a deep dive with joy, with fun, and create a vision board, and then spend your year activating it. All the things I put on my vision board in 2019, pretty much all of them, came true. And that vision
Awesome.
board, you know?
Yeah, but you say that, but most people are visual people. And having a visual reminder of what you need to get done or you need to do really can help you catapult and overcome the challenge that you have in front of you, because what you can see is the end goal. And putting it somewhere, I imagine, in your house where you see it on a daily basis, reminding whether it's on the fridge or in your office or somewhere in the kitchen, where you see it every day and you know, okay, this is the promise I made to myself. This is the life that I can live. Let me go at it. And it's a constant reminder day by day that this is what I need to do.
I really want to ask you the question, because you are,
Yeah.
you're also in a corporate world for years and years and years. And one of the things that I want to continue to do is to roll this out corporately, because corporations need to have a very clear vision. And I think people set a vision, and maybe they set a mission statement. And then the question is, where's their vision board? Where is it in front of people, especially now that people are so spread out or people are remote, right? What does one do in an organization to have a clear vision, and then to with fun and impact and joy, how do you create that vision day in and day out? You're not in an office anymore. Maybe you don't have the most magnanimous leader. How do you create that bubbling excitement? Because a vision board is meant to be exciting. You look at it, you love it. You're like, I think these are such fun conversations, because it's where you place value, whether it's corporately, whether it's individually. It's place saying, I'm not going to be distracted. Like, one of the things we talk about is, like, you have to schedule time for dreaming. You have to schedule time in your life for dreaming, and you have to place value on it. And that my youngest teaches mindfulness and meditation in corporate settings. She did her thesis on mindfulness in corporate America. And I think that one of the positives about this up and coming generation is they understand that all these distractions are quite destructive, and they're working very hard, whether it's in the area of mental health or in the area of mindfulness and presence, to start, I guess, recovering. Every generation does that. They look at what is hurting themselves and they start to recover. And I think that this next generation is going to be the generation that says, you know what, I'm going to schedule time for joy. I'm going to schedule time for manifesting. I'm going to schedule time for mindfulness. And all those things are going to propel them forward. It could be very exciting.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you have full control over those factors, right? And, in my 40s, and I keep mentioning in my 40s because I feel like the longer you're around, the more you see things. And unfortunately, one of the things that you do see is you kind of experience loss. You see that. You see you see people that you were at their weddings and it was the most joyous day of their life. And then fast forward, you see the same people, don't want to even speak to the other person. Like, you see things, and some things are out of your control. You can't control, right? Like some health issues, you just can't. Accidents, you can't. But for the majority of things, you have a lot of control over them, right? And you can anticipate some things, right? If you're going paycheck to paycheck now in your 20s and 30s, and you don't prioritize saving or investing, life is going to be much more challenging when you're 50 and 60 and you're still in the same place and you didn't make provisions for that. The same for physical health. If you didn't prioritize physical health, your life later on is going to be significantly different. Same with mental health. If you don't work out your inner demons, or like try to work on maybe past trauma, limiting beliefs that we discussed, or practice improving your own self-talk, or tell yourself better stories about yourself, it's going to be much more challenging as you progress through life, and you kind of have lesser energy because of aging, because of a variety of different factors. So you have a lot of control within your hands today for for tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Take advantage of it, because again, going back to it, you see a lot, and even the most successful people that I know, for them, the most finite resource is time. And that's why you got to take steps today to have as much time as you can. Because we talk about the importance of having a purpose-driven life in your 50s and 60s, but that only comes paramount if you have the resources to do that.
Sure. You know, it's funny, you talk about planning and you talk about aging, and the crazy thing is, this statistically is, we're going to live longer, right? You keep referring to like 40s, 50s. But the crazy thing is, you know, the trends now are that people are going to be living, the average age is rising from 79 to 83. You know, that means the average age. That means that there are tons of people who are going to live to 100. That becomes the scary part for people who are my age, because, wow, you know, maybe you were planning and you were thinking that, you know, you had a certain lifespan, and now you realize like it could be maybe another 10 or 20 years longer than you anticipated. So you really do need to be, you know, rethinking and planning for a longer runway. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. For sure. For sure. And that's a blessing. It's a blessing. You're going to stick around longer than previous generations did. But that means, look, why not think of that stage of your life as a game, right? Like, how do you want it to look, right? Gamify the process. You know, it's not about, if you think you're going to right now, right? You think retirement is about, okay, well, I don't need to work. I'm just going to chill and relax on the couch and that's going to be good. But if you do that now for one day, okay, it's nice. You do it for 2 days. Oh, it's still nice. Is it going to be nice for another month, another 2 months, 3 months? Because if you don't work on hobbies now, it's going to be very difficult to get into those hobbies later on in life, right? So if you plan on golfing when you're 60 and 70, if that's your plan, if that is your ideal life, then take up golfing now. You're going to be significantly better in, after 100 hours than 95% of the population. So invest time in that version of who you want to be.
And I think just keep investing in yourself generally at every age in making life, that even that is an outdated norm. I would toss that back at you and say, that's very much like, what the ad community would paint retirement looking like. Like, it's just people playing golf. The reality, you talk about income and money and expenses and things like that. I don't think there are a whole lot. Yes, of course, there's a segment of people who are retiring and playing golf, but most are not. And the good news is that if people my age do decide to go out and pursue a new business or a new venture, the banks and investors are very warm to us because they know that we've seen a lot of experience. We've built up tons of resilience. And so they're excited about the new things that we do. So I think that all the norms go out the window. The norms for the younger generation about what life is going to look like have changed. The norms about what life is going to look like for people in their 50s and older have changed. And I think, we're rewriting, and maybe that's what we do in history. We're just rewriting what it looks like, and which can be extremely, exciting and interesting. I think that the messaging has to change. The same way it has to change for
Absolutely.
younger people about what the expectations are. I think the messaging has to change for people my age about where we're being, pigeonholed. Um, and I said it years ago when I gave that talk. We are responsible for 56 cents of every dollar. If you look at people who are 50 and older as an economy, we would be the third largest economy after the US and China. I'll just say that
Wow.
again, right? If we were looked at as an economy, would be the third largest economy. We last year we spent $8.3 trillion. That number is going to triple by 2050. So everything is changing. Everything is changing, and having a growth mindset and having the ability to pivot, which is sort of where we started, and having the ability to envision and to dream and to make sure you surround yourself with people at every age who are like, yeah, do that, try that. How are you going to get there? That's what makes all the scary stuff less scary at any age, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there is pressure from, societal norms that don't really apply anymore. And the sooner we stop paying attention to them and start thinking, all right, well, what kind of life do I really want to live? And take the journey a little bit more inward, think about it, reframe it. That's when we'll be more successful. So, Donna, we're almost at the end of the podcast, and I always love asking my guests, is there a book that resonated a lot to you? And you already mentioned The Alchemist, which it's a very popular book, and everybody knows that, the whole premise of the book is you need to travel around the world, and what you're looking for could be right in front of you, but you still need to go travel the world in search for it to really appreciate it, right? And that's a big part of the book, which is a very amazing book. But is there a book that you can recommend to our audience that you found insightful and meaningful, and maybe touched upon some of the themes we discussed about today?
Yeah. I probably in my 30s read The Art of Possibility, and it was co-written by the then conductor of the Boston Pops and his wife, who was a therapist. And it's an easy read. It's probably about 10 chapters, and it just talks about
Nice.
possibility and all the roads that you can take to create more possibility in your life. And it never left me. It's a highly recommended read for anybody at any age to just open, and ultimately to just open doors.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to reading it over the holiday then. And then, Donna, how can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Well, Empty Quester is really my handle. So there's a website, Empty Quester. I'm the Empty Quester on TikTok, 8,500 followers and growing, which is so cool.
Whoa.
And that happened over the period of 6 weeks. And it really spoke to me. I
Nice.
thought that my market was, really 50 plus, and learned very quickly, no, my market is, much younger than that. People who want to get started. And actually, people coming into my workshop are getting younger and younger, trying to figure out their what's next. So you can DM me at Empty Quester on Instagram. You can find me at Empty Quester on TikTok, and you can reach me through my website.
Excellent. Can you repeat the website again, just because I think we got static?
EmptyQuester.com. And to make it easy, an empty
Oh, wow.
quester is an empty nester on a quest for our bold new chapter. So there's EmptyQuester.com.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you, Donna. Thank you to the audience for sticking through. This is a new journey for myself as well, so any feedback is appreciated. And if you found this useful, please like, comment, share with someone that might find it useful as well. Thank you so much, and see you soon.
Thank you so much, Nicos. So much fun to be here.
Thank you. Likewise.